Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. I want to say thank you to Social Media Cowboys for sponsoring this week's episode of the Confidence Through Health podcast. If you need help with a website, if you need social media needs for your business, if you need help with AdWords, SEO, all those things that you know you should be doing, but you are too busy to do or you're too confused about, they are the experts that you need in your corner. If you're interested in launching a podcast, such as mine, they help me edit my podcast and do a fantastic job making sure that all of the technical side of it is handled and we launch a nice, neat, edited podcast episode each week. So I want to thank Social Media Cowboys for their continued sponsorship of the Confidence Through Health podcast. You can find them at socialmediacowboys.com, or you can find them as well with other sponsors at confidencethroughhealth.com. Welcome, Chris, to the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
So I just want to point out for anybody that's listening or watching on YouTube that I'm in the US, you're in Australia. So if there does happen to be a little glitch here and there, technology is wonderful, but we are on opposite sides of the world. So something may come up and happen, and that's okay.
I call it technology trauma,
Yep, exactly. Well, and speaking of trauma, like there's things with that happen that we don't necessarily relate as trauma anymore because we're so busy, we're so fast paced. Things hit us, and we don't take the time to absorb and figure out what's going on. And I think that sort of plays into what you're, putting out into the world and resonating with this idea of self-intelligence, which I'd never really heard of until, seeing the information that you've gotten, you're putting out, and it's like, oh wow, this makes a lot of sense. And I think it's stuff that people maybe in the past sort of, I don't know if we knew or we were going so slow in taking time out to not have a phone in our hands all the time that we were with ourselves more often, but I definitely see it as something that we need to to learn and grasp and go back to.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so
this work.
Yeah, I was just going to say, tell us a little bit about what self-intelligence means to you, and why is it something that you're putting your life into?
It started with my own personal journey, which is a great place to start because it's experiential and very sincere. I found myself in pain in many different areas of my life, and I know a lot of people can relate to pain points in different areas of their life.
Right.
I had toxic debt and relationship challenges, lack of meaning and purpose, just the main the usual suspects. Were there at a time when personal development, this was 20 years ago, personal development wasn't so readily available as it is now. And I had no idea how to get out of my situation. I was spiraling. I was taking antidepressants. I was in chronic pain. Sleep was a really big issue. It was just spiraling, right? And I eventually, intuitively, when a certain sort of degree of suffering took place, started to be curious about things like meditation, even though I had no idea what that meant. And I had no idea how that was going to help me. How is that going to work out my problems and stuff? So, and also in my conditioning, things like meditation were almost evil. I was brought up in a Christian sort of ideology and that type of thing. And so there was that kind of barrier as well. But I was just so called to be still with myself, to actually start to look at what's going on behind the eyes. My focus was everything outside, and it wasn't working to keep looking in that direction. So something was saying, go this way, start looking this way at yourself. And that set off a huge journey of self-exploration. And I realized that I didn't have an understanding of what was going on inside me. You know, what were the conditioned beliefs? What were the things that were unconscious there, that were playing out in my everyday life, that were
Right.
dictating my choices, my actions, my behavior, that were getting the results that I was getting. And it didn't matter how much I wanted those things to change, they weren't changing.
Yeah.
They just weren't. They were even
Yeah.
they would get worse. Sometimes I'd have like a strong, like intention to do something, and one time was like giving up caffeine or giving up alcohol, and it would only increase in
Yeah.
its severity after that, which was so frustrating and
I'm
deflating
sure.
and depressing as well.
Yeah.
So, uh, yeah, I've now discovered a lot
Yeah.
like on this subject, and I dedicated my entire life to it. And since I've been as a therapist and a coach, and I've accumulated a range of different modalities over that time. And then I started to see patterns, which is what happens for
Hmm.
people like me. And then you start to really look into the patterns that are calling your attention. And
Right.
I was basically, yeah, looking at the causes of suffering in our lives, or what's at the basis of that.
Yeah.
And the answer was what eventually got termed self-intelligence. Once you
Hmm.
have self-intelligence, you have the capacity to disidentify and to change what's going on inside that's manifesting everything and how we're creating our lives.
Gotcha.
And it's not a new thing. There's a
Hmm.
lot of different people doing this type of work all over the world, calling it all different things.
Sure.
The words that just felt appropriate to me were self, meaning what's going on with me, or who
Hmm.
am I, and
Right.
what questions can I ask to understand myself better. Intelligence is the application of that understanding,
Hmm.
right? It's the, it's a, and it's also understanding that there's an intelligence much higher than our minds that is
Hmm.
actually operating in our lives.
Right.
And that is actually the self that I'm referring to. Oftentimes, when the word self is there, the idea, because we're conditioned this way, is to think that we're talking about the mind,
Yeah.
you know, but actually the self is beyond the mind, and we
Right.
can get into that.
Yeah.
Um, and it is then from that perspective an acute awareness of mind
Hmm.
and its whole operation. But
Yeah.
you cannot be aware of your mind while you are your mind.
Right.
You
Yep.
have to step back, take that
Yeah.
perspective and go, okay, I see the thoughts and beliefs and perspectives and wounds and trauma, whatever's
Right.
going on in there,
Yeah.
that's dictating my life choices and my actions and my behavior and my reactions and my triggers and all of that, that is amounting to the reality I'm creating. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
is that like is that basically our ego that's just we can't get past, that's
Well,
allowed, that's
yeah.
keeping us in that frame of mind that we just we can't step back and see all the rest of the stuff going on.
Yeah, ego is a loaded word. It
Right.
for points to, often in the West, it sort of points to an attitude,
Hmm.
that guy's got a big ego or she's
Right.
got a big, in terms of self-intelligence, in terms of self-awareness, ego points to identification with something that you're not,
Oh, okay.
because we become identified with things,
Yeah. Right.
you become identified with everything externally. You can become
Sure.
identified with a place, a home, a car, a football team, your
Right.
name,
Yeah.
like your possessions, a
Right.
hairstyle, like we just become
Yeah.
identified. This is me, this is me, this is me.
Yeah.
And we have this habit of doing that.
Hmm.
And then internally, even more so than that, we become identified with our emotional states, our feeling states, like this
Right.
is me.
Yeah.
We become identified with our thoughts big time,
Yeah.
particularly the ones that are on repeat, the ones that are
Hmm.
habitual. Yeah.
Right.
If we experience something enough and it becomes familiar and it seems very close,
Yeah.
it's like, that's got to be me.
Right.
You see,
Right.
the challenge with ego is that it's just fundamentally not true.
Hmm.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
And if you believe that that's who you are, then you're trapped in
Hmm.
that. And that pursuit for me, when I was in a very challenging time, was I want to be free of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
How do I get free? Freedom, the desire for freedom is, I feel like, the strongest impulse for
Hmm.
every human being behind everything I feel like we're doing. If you really break it down and look at it, it's like there's some kind of freedom,
Yeah.
and freedom holds our highest values in it.
Hmm.
Love and authenticity and respect and safety, and
Right.
there's a whole range of values that are inside of that notion of freedom. Yeah. And so the ego is a non-free state.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, I'm stuck with this because the law of change in the world, yeah,
Hmm. Yep.
is constantly, you know, got the
Right.
what we're identified with is threatened because it's
Yeah.
being, it's not in our control, but we're trying to
Hmm.
control it, trying to keep it together,
Right.
trying to convince ourselves we know who we are through these things. And it's also a little bit confronting to if I ask someone, who are you? Who are you?
Yeah.
If you identify yourself as things,
Hmm.
it doesn't really feel right when you say
Yeah.
it. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I'm my name, for example, I'm, Jerry, or I'm Chris, or whatever.
Right.
It's like, well, I could change my name
Sure.
and, well, I'd be that name now. So
Right.
I wouldn't be the other name. So I
Yeah.
guess I'm not, I guess it's kind of true that I'm my name, but I'm not really if I can change it. And
Yeah.
you can take that to everything you can observe,
Yeah. Well, and I
everything.
think that's so true that we identify ourselves so much with, you know, our family life, what we do for a career,
Yep.
and I know I was in that tunnel for a long time in the corporate world, and you go to a networking event and who are you? What do you do? And
Yeah.
and the who are you question was what's your name, not anything deeper than that, right? It was like, I'm
Yeah.
meeting you for the first time. What's your name? What do you do? Who do you work for? And and I think that leads us to, grasping onto that and having that identity. But I agree with you that because one of the things that I've worked towards over the past few years is like, okay, how do I get away from who I think I am and find out what's really going on, right?
Yeah.
Like what's really behind the scenes and what really drives me to and the more I've done it, the more I get away from like what the typical society says should be happening in my life.
Bingo. The word you used there was should.
Right.
The ego structure, which I actually call the lower self. I've
Mhm.
moved away from that word because of how loaded it is.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. Some people call it your shadow self, like
Hmm.
whatever you want to call. The lower self or ego self is a construct of judgments. It is
Hmm.
fundamentally judgmental,
Right.
and not necessarily even negatively, but what its purpose is, it's trying to recreate itself wherever it possibly can. And you will notice this, and this is for the viewers, if you're able to be honest with yourself, because we're very judgmental of the fact that we're judgmental as well.
Oh, sure.
So we deny judgment because we shouldn't judge. That's what people
Hmm.
say. You shouldn't judge, which is already a judgment on top of a
Right.
judgment, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But when anybody does not reflect back to you something that you can recognize in yourself, so that as soon as someone is not relatable to you, judgment will come.
Hmm.
we know this with really basic things like skin color, right? So
Sure.
it's like, hey, you're not the same color as I am.
Right.
So judgment will come just on the basis that you're not reflecting something that I can relate to.
Right.
And therefore, you're contradicting my existence,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So you'll notice that people who are highly identified, they will make sure that you either become like them or they only have people around them that they can accept that are reflecting something back to them
Yeah.
like this.
Right.
And that is extremely limited. It doesn't allow for diversity to exist, which is the beauty of our existence is
Yeah.
diversity.
Right.
It tries to segment everything into, and then you get the compartmentalization and the whole control manipulative aspect,
Mm-hmm.
which is just, I've got to make everything like me to
Yeah.
feel safe,
Right.
and the shoulds and shouldn'ts are a big part of that. So
Mhm.
we're conditioned from early on. Every one of us is conditioned from our parents, from society, and so on. This is who you should be,
Yeah.
so that we can accept you.
Right.
Okay, so a
Yep.
big part, and I mean a massive part of self-intelligence is the desire to be authentic,
Yeah.
right? The desire to be true to yourself. And you
Mm-hmm.
cannot be true to yourself while you are living in the default settings of what you can been conditioned to be in order to be acceptable to your tribe, to society, to your family, whatever words you want to place on that.
Right. Right.
Because every one of us is a very unique expression
Mhm.
of consciousness. We all come from the same place, and I can experientially show you that in
Sure.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, but the vessel, the being, so the form that we take is unique,
Mm-hmm.
and oftentimes suffering will occur in our lives trying to force our uniqueness into a shape that doesn't resonate,
Mm-hmm.
and that is based on those shoulds, those
Right.
conditions, right?
Right.
Because we become unconsciously, and it's unconscious. I've become unconsciously identified. What does identify mean? Let's just break that down for a second. If your parent implies through body language, through tonality, because it's often not even very direct.
Yeah.
It's often very just like a look or a
Mm-hmm.
kind of a gesture or something. It's like, oh, something about what I did there is not no good.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, then we will sort of take that on and then change our behavior, change our
Mhm.
shape to kind of fit what our parents were sort of suggesting in order to,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's love, that's approved of, right? Okay, I've
Yep.
got that now.
Right.
And now we've got an inner conflict
Mhm.
going on, a
Yeah.
suppression of
Right.
energy and expression happening. Yeah, so
And that's that conditioning factor, right? That like whether it's your parents or your employer or an authority figure at school, like whoever it is that you've
yeah.
put trust in can have a massive influence on who you think you are, but also how you continue to act until you realize that you don't have to be that.
Yeah, particularly if it doesn't serve you.
Yeah,
Some conditioning is very useful and it's
sure.
helpful and it's great. And other parts of our conditioning are way off to our natural way of being, or slightly off,
Right.
slightly off to our natural way of being. Um, and there's so many examples of this. Like conditioning is like water to a fish.
Yeah.
We're so in it, we don't even realize we're in it.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like, look at the condition. It's like, what are you talking about? What's water? Like I'm so in it, you
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to have very clever, very specific tools and processes to actually reveal what it is.
Mhm.
And it's actually really simple when you understand it,
Mhm.
like anything that's really good. Um, But yes, this suffering will show up if we're not prepared to do that, and we're fighting against ourselves
Right.
with this conditioning.
Yeah.
So conditioning is one example. We put our own beliefs on things based on our experiences as well.
Right.
If something is uncomfortable, we had a bad experience with someone or something,
Right.
we will all of a sudden, and it's through survival mode that we do this.
Yeah.
We will determine and blanket an idea on a certain thing from that point on, which is extremely limiting to do
Right.
that.
Right.
You know,
Yep.
and so then our natural selves is then inhibited from its natural experiences based on those conclusions. We make
Right.
conclusions.
Right.
This is safe, this is dangerous. We do this why? Because in the survival mode, if a snake was to bite you and someone died, or in the tribe or something, you have to then assume all snakes are dangerous.
Right.
This is how the survival work. We
Yeah.
don't have a chance. It's like you're gonna
Right.
die or not. Like we've got to take it as
Yeah.
this is how that works. But
Yeah.
we take that same mode into if you were bullied at school, or if you had like say sexual abuse, or if you had just some disrespectful experiences with a certain gender, for example,
Right.
or whatever, that same blanketed process can happen.
Yeah.
And now I'm suffering those ideas. You see,
Yeah.
I'm suffering the unquestioned belief. So going back to where I was with identification means when I've done that, I believe the thought that I have without question.
Right. Well, and
Okay,
that's
so that's to kind of round it back all the way
yeah.
back to where I started with what does identification mean, is because we have all these thoughts. Everyone has thoughts, thousands
All
of
the
them
time.
going on all the time, right?
Yep.
But the ones that we believe, like we grab, and you'll
Yeah.
see my body language with that,
Oh
because it's
yeah.
like, whoa, I've got it. Okay, no,
Yeah.
I'm going to believe that one, right? Belief and identity go together,
Right.
okay? And belief is not truth.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
the whole
True.
world doesn't. It's a strange thing. Like you'll see this more and more. It's like I think the world is not aware of that yet
Yeah.
fully.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
belief is not truth. Even the idea that, for example, if we had the Olympics recently and 8 people are about to do the 100-meter sprint, all of them have to believe that they're going to win
Right.
to be there, right? They
Yeah.
have to all believe that.
Absolutely.
But it's not true.
Right.
It's just
Yep.
the belief is really important
Yeah.
to excel and to get the results and to beat records and whatever. The belief is powerful, actually,
Sure.
but belief is not truth. And this is the kind of thing that inspired the vision that I have for self-intelligence, right? Because self-intelligence, if you were self-intelligent, you would know a belief is not truth.
Right.
But we're not discerning of that in our society yet.
Yeah.
We think if we believe something based on the experience we have, then it's a fact.
Right.
And we've all do it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I write and know this work and live this work every day, and I still do it myself. It happens.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's got to
Yeah.
be, but the difference is I have a habit of inquiry that prevents me from doing that,
Right.
in terms of to then create a perpetual state of suffering, which will happen, right?
Yep.
Because the truth sets you free,
Yeah.
not a belief sets you free.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And so I mean we could go into all different orifices
Oh
of
yeah.
direction, when it
Yeah.
comes to that. But when we're talking about suffering in our personal lives, our programming is belief based, and then it becomes its own prison sentence, our personal experiences, and then we
Right.
get, wounding
Right.
and trauma, which all are connected to survival mode,
Yep.
which all then get believed as well.
Mm-hmm.
Belief. If you put all that together, you've got a construct,
Mm-hmm.
and that construct is the shape of the person you take yourself to be.
Right.
Okay, so that's me now,
Yeah.
right? And this me isn't just thought, like belief, because belief is also reflected instantaneously in the body as feelings and emotions and
Right.
vibration. So you experience it's a mirror, like they're
Yeah.
one and the
Yep.
same. They're one and the
Yep.
same. The body mind connection. I trained and taught many students across the world emotional anatomy, which was to
Hmm.
understand the body mind connection, right? Because we
Yeah.
somehow separated them, which is
Right.
just bizarre, but we did. So we feel it, and then whatever we feel to be true, because remember, we feel it to be true,
Sure.
we act on,
Right.
we behave, we
Yeah.
do things, like, and they can be crazy things
Oh
sometimes.
yeah.
And and then part of us is going, I know this is crazy. Why am I doing this? Like
Hmm.
addictions, for example,
Right.
and all sorts of different things. But something inside says, but my belief is that that is going to solve my issue, or that's going
Hmm.
to be beneficial to me in some way, even though on
Right.
some level, it's not, some level it is. So the
Yeah.
lower self will say it is, the higher self will be going, what are you doing?
Right.
You know,
Yep.
the higher perspective, which is
Yeah.
always what is the case, isn't it? When you take a higher
Oh yeah.
perspective, you can see what's going on and you go, why is this happening? Like,
Yeah.
and then, but the thing is, because of identity, we actually default back to the lower
Hmm.
self and then live our lives from there, create our
Yep.
lives from there,
Yep.
create our realities from there. And I think a lot of people now recognize that how I feel, and feeling creates vibration, right? You can feel
Right.
like there's a vibration about how you
Hmm.
feel. That's creating my reality. Like, how can it not be?
Yeah.
How can the life that's going on outside me be separate from that? Whether that is what I attract into my experience. And a lot of people get frustrated, like they attract the same relationships, the same people, the
Right.
same problems, the same insecurities, and so on. It's like, why am I attracting the same thing over and over? Or you can look at it from the perspective of manifestation.
Hmm.
Why do I keep creating the
Right.
same scenarios and the same situations and da 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 da? And that's when
Yeah.
you start going, well, if I'm to admit that that's what's happening and stop blaming the outside world for what I'm experiencing, which is the first stage of the ego self.
Hmm.
The ego self thinks everything's external and you've got nothing to do with it.
Right.
That's
Right.
the ego self's position.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm innocent. I'm just over here. And
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on or why it's happening, but
Yeah.
it's like this. And
Yeah.
then eventually you realize you're a big part of it, and not as a fault, not as in like it's your fault, like you
Right.
should blame yourself or anything like this. It's just a misunderstanding,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and it takes a lot of discernment over time to really truly unpack that,
Hmm.
because it's a bit bizarre. It's like the world's opposite to what we thought,
Oh yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and when it comes to like your health or your your emotional well-being, like
Mm,
once you identify yourself as something, and I immediately go to somebody who's been given a diagnosis from a doctor, right? Like if you get a diagnosis of cancer or heart disease or in the medical system is really good about going, nope, that's who you are now, right? You're a diabetic. That's boom, that's who you are. It's like, oh, but no, I just made some bad choices and that was the outcome. If I step back, I can go, okay, wait, that's not who I am. It's just who I have to deal with right now. And then I can overcome that. And those people are typically the people that you hear about that are like, oh my gosh, they had stage 4 cancer. And then all of a sudden they're fine. Like, how did they do that? And it's
exactly.
like, oh, they didn't say that's who I am. And then as they identify with it, go, well, if that's who I am, this is what happens to those people.
Mm.
So that's my trajectory for the rest of my life.
And then how do I compensate for that, which will
Right.
often be some kind of drug, it'll be some kind of other kind of behavior to
Right.
compensate for that imbalance. I personally, that's where I've come from. So I was told I couldn't go back to school because of a violent thing that took place
Hmm.
unless I was on antidepressants. I was told I had depression due to the trauma I experienced from my father. And I also had chronic back pain for 6 years. And that's a long time when you're
That's a
younger.
long time.
Like that feels
Yeah.
like that feels like forever. And I was
Oh yeah.
told I was going to have it forever
Yeah.
and you're going to have to manage it.
Right.
And there was this whisper inside me somehow recognized, and that's the miracle of all of this, right? Somehow I recognized this whisper inside me because no one was saying otherwise.
Yeah.
You know, I'm talking to psychologists and
Mhm.
um, like whole teams of medical professionals looking at these things and you know saying what they're saying, and something in me is going, this is off, right?
Yeah.
And I find that a miracle just
Yeah.
in itself that can
Oh
even
yeah.
happen. And I'm like, no, this is not a forever thing. The truth is, I haven't truly taken responsibility. I'm hoping someone's going to take this from me.
Right.
If I'm really honest with myself,
Yeah.
like really honest, I'm afraid, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. And I want someone else to take it off me.
Yeah.
And something in me overseeing, like, I don't know how many therapists through those two different things on their
Mhm.
own, not to mention some other things that was there as well. I was like, no one can help me that way.
Right.
Something came very clear in me that no one can truly help me that way. I have to take full responsibility. And as soon as that took place, I went internal, and then all those external remedies started to have greater effect.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so those
Mhm.
external remedies are still relevant
Sure.
in that how they support things, but they weren't having an impact because I was the one that kept disrupting the
Right.
remedy from doing
Yeah.
anything good, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I noticed this as a practitioner myself. I was a musculoskeletal therapist and psychosomatic therapist, and I'd be working with a range of different issues with people. And it became abundantly clear, if you're in the way of the healing process
Mhm.
because you're identified with certain things inside yourself that keep the vibration of that illness,
Right.
I can only ever temporarily like take you out of that state
Yeah.
through the therapeutic intervention. But the habit of that pattern that hasn't been identified yet will just kind of take back over. And it's like, I feel so good for like a few days and then
Mhm.
it comes back.
Right.
And what I notice is that's a great business model,
Yeah.
because if you're really good at relieving symptoms, you know, like you're basically going to be booked out. So it's
Right.
like, I got to come back to you, you know, get the chiropractic adjustment or get the massage or get the pill or get the thing or that.
Right.
And then, you know, I'll see in a few weeks when I'm back into my state of,
Right.
you know, feeling like rubbish. And
Yeah.
so I didn't feel, due to my own experience of healing, that was just didn't resonate with me to
Mhm.
do that. And I've also been shocked to some extent as to how much resistance there is for
Oh
people to
yeah.
take responsibility for their
Mhm.
actual health. It's like, I don't want to look at that stuff. It's too uncomfortable. I don't feel confident that I would be able to actually work at that level with myself,
Mhm.
even if I was supported, which is a lot of support still
Yeah.
with that. Um, I want to keep the person I've become, which is the problem,
Right.
because it's just the identification with those things we've
Mhm.
been speaking about. I want to keep that, and I want the problem to go away while I keep it.
Right.
And so there are rare human beings, but more and more now,
Mhm.
who are saying, you know what, I'm prepared to also give that up because that's not who I am.
Yeah.
It's not who I am. It's who I've become unconsciously. And if I've got myself here, I can get myself out of it.
Right.
I realize I might not have the tools to do that because what? We didn't get told even what an emotion was at school. We didn't get told
Yeah.
what a belief was at school. We didn't get told
Right.
anything at school about what's
Yeah.
going on inside of us.
Right.
So people who are generally in enough pain or wise enough or humble enough will go, yeah, I'm prepared to learn and understand how to do this in no different
Mhm.
way that they would do that with exercise or
Right.
nutrition or anything
Right.
else that is a part of lifestyle, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the things that one of the reasons I think that I was able to go down that path myself
Mm.
was because I I found myself parenting the same way I was parented, and I wanted to change that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I have to figure out what, it, because and a lot of things are like that as far as, you know, when people say, oh, I'm going to be big because my parents were big and my grandparents were big and da da. Well, that's nothing to do with your genes, really. It has to do with what you were taught how to go about life, how to eat, how to do these things, right? You were taught improper health, mechanisms. And and so until you understand that and go like, oh wait, I'm my own healer if I can get out of my own way,
Yes.
and I tell people I train that when they're athletes, I'm like, okay, when you're in the race, your brain's going to go off because you're in pain, you're hurting, you're like, if you're pushing yourself beyond your previous limit, your physical body's going to say, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. You have to get beyond yourself and go into a point where you're like, okay, brain, shut off and just run. I've prepared for this. Just run and become the new person at the new speed, and that translates into, other parts of life that, yeah, we have to get out of our own way and and put those things aside and go, if I want a different life in whatever part of my life I want it to change and become different, then that change is a big piece of it, but it has to come from within.
Yeah, it has to be understood just very simply. If you think the same thoughts and you have the same feelings and you behave the same way, you're going to have the same reality.
Right.
It's just so simple like
Yep.
this. Just no different to if you sit on a couch all day and eat the same foods that are high in, carbohydrates or whatever the case is, and
Yep.
you're going to put on weight.
Yep.
It's a very simple thing.
Yep.
There's different pain and uncomfortable feelings with this process that certain beings are willing to experience and others are not. Like with exercise, it's uncomfortable,
Sure.
right? Until it's
Yeah.
comfortable, because it
Right.
also is comfortable as well as it's uncomfortable, right?
Right.
Getting out of bed in the morning is uncomfortable, but we do it because, it's time to go to work or do whatever we
Right.
got to do. We resist uncomfortable feelings all the
Mhm.
time at our own detriment.
Mhm.
When we're talking about self-intelligence, when we're talking about freedom, and I mean real freedom,
Mhm.
not the freedom we're sold
Right.
from ridiculous ideas that keep proving not to be true, we're talking about the uncomfortable feelings of grief.
Mhm.
We're talking about uncomfortable feelings of shame and
Yeah.
uncomfortable feelings of guilt and uncomfortable feelings of resentment. And realizing how fundamentally selfish we are without knowing that.
Right.
For example, like there are things to admit in ourselves that are difficult to admit are happening
Right.
because they don't match our self-image.
Mhm.
We have a self-image we
Yeah.
of who we think we are,
Right.
this type of thing. And then we have our actual
Mhm.
identity that's there in the dark. That's why it's called often the shadow work, because it's in the shadow.
Yeah.
You don't know it's there until it's
Yeah.
pointed out. We don't know it's there until in our reality is reflecting it.
Mhm.
So why am I getting these abusive relationships? So why people don't disrespecting me? Or why am I getting this success in my work? Or what? It's
Right.
like there's something back there
Yeah.
that hasn't been looked at yet.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable to look at it.
Mhm.
Because
Oh
what
yeah.
we don't know what it's going to mean if we do look at it. What if I do look at it, right? What if I do
Yeah.
look at it? What's going to happen? What's going to
Yeah.
happen in my life? What's going to happen in my relationships? What's going to happen to my motivation? Why would I do what I'm doing? There's a lot of fear
Oh yeah.
about it, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you wanted to change your parenting style, this is what you said, and you
Mhm.
realize you're conditioned by your parents and you could see you're doing the same thing. There can be fear there going, well, I know I want to change my parenting style, but I don't know who I would be
Right.
if I was different to this. So
Yeah.
that's just uncomfortable already. Like, what?
Mhm.
So I know who to be based on my conditioning.
Right.
I know what that looks like. I know the patterns of it. I know what it
Mhm.
feels like. It's known.
Right.
And so we can see then this resistance to looking at ourselves is very much a protection mechanism from survival mode.
Mhm.
You know, and the
Yeah.
lower self or ego state or whatever the case is, you could almost call it the vibration of survival mode.
Mhm.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
If I don't know who to be, then I'm in trouble. I might not
Right.
be able to survive. I might not be able to feed myself. You know, and these
Mhm.
kind of catastrophizing thoughts will come.
Yeah.
But the truth is, you're in your natural state. So the higher self is not something you create. It's
Yeah.
not something, it's not like being a good person. Like, okay, I'm going to be my higher self today and I'm going to be a great person and I'm going to help people and I'm going to da da da.
Right.
Your higher self is the absence of being in that survival mode state.
Yeah.
It's just your natural state.
Right.
So we often witness this in kids, where you can see that they are experiencing a full range of emotions, that
Mhm.
they're not confused about the things that they're attracted to and curious about. They're in their natural state.
Yeah.
And of course, we mature as we grow older with that. We're not going to relate to life the same as a 2-year-old, as a 10-year-old, as a
Sure.
20-year-old, right?
Right.
But there is a natural state for every one of us the whole time. And that is where our values become more obvious and
Mhm.
then we actually live by them.
Yeah.
Because when we're living in the lower vibrational states, the lower self, we're living through what I like to call ego needs. And they're basically based on fears.
Yeah.
Ego needs are like the need for validation.
Mhm.
So, or the need to be right, for example.
Yeah.
The need to know. The need to be seen, the need to
Mhm.
be heard. The amount of times that triggers show up in relationships based on the
Yeah.
need to be seen and the need to be heard is astronomical.
Oh, yeah.
The need for approval, the need to belong,
Right.
the need that I've got a whole list of them, right? And
Yeah.
they drive the actual behavior,
Right.
not the value of peace
Mhm.
and respect
Yeah.
and discipline
Right.
and you know, like these high values that we attach to our self-image,
Mhm.
and we believe we're acting from there.
Yeah.
But if we only could hear our dialogue,
Mhm.
so one whole chapter I do in self-intelligence is just to make you aware of the words you're using,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
You
I
know,
think I mean, it's an amazing thing to like sit and think about it. And, and again, it goes back to like, I started doing a bunch of recordings and videos on, initially on Facebook and YouTube and just putting stuff out. And part of it was just to practice to get, talking to people and talking about my business and what I do. And then it became like, okay, helping people and yeah, listening back to them and going like, whoa, did I really phrase it that way? Did I really, and you start to go, okay, wow, like maybe there are some things that I have to work on myself, that are going to say like, okay, like, like this is better for me to function as who I really want to be if I work on the way that I talk and the way that I interact with people.
and you know, you can the way that I approach, like, so say you say a word like should is a good
Mhm.
word. When should comes up, this is what
Yep.
you should do. You're like, okay, wait, I just heard that word come up. What am I basing that idea on?
Yeah.
What is it? And so the should is, you should have, when you came home after, no, I had a really big day, you should have come and given me a hug and checked in with me. This is what you
Mhm.
should have done. And the fact that you went straight to your room and did something else or whatever, now I'm triggered by that.
Right.
So I've got this should thought. Now I can look at that and question it to the truth of that.
Mhm.
Right. And I can actually see that I'm generating more suffering for myself and what's going on in my environment, and coming out of my true values by connecting and believing in that should, and therefore my communication that may be able to address a practical thing that's going on
Right.
is coming from fear, not coming
Mhm.
from respect.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, fear is not going to create anything good in my
Yeah.
situation. Um, And then there's also like, I mean, I could go on and on about this, but we don't even realize, because when we think beliefs, we think like religion or something.
Right.
You know, we just think
Yep.
like this type of thing. No, I'm
Yeah.
talking everything is encased in it.
Yeah.
Everything. The whole filter of your whole experience is that. And there are troublesome, obvious things.
Yep.
In coaching world, like the I can't comes out, you know,
Right.
like I
Yep.
can't do, you know, this thing,
Yep.
like you would probably referring to with the
Yep.
training, you know, I can't go any further and things like this. These can be questioned. Oftentimes when people talk about their lives in the past, they'll use never and always quite a lot, right?
Yep.
And we've locked in then an identity based on the memories of those past, because there's no room for anything else if never and always is the word being used, right?
Yep.
And there's a whole plethora of them. A controversial one is deserve.
Oh, yes.
All right. So if you understand the energetics of that word, I deserve, it also comes with a sense of entitlement. And both of them have no basis in reality.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Like, for example, going back to the sprinters, you know, doing the sprint, and they all believe they're going to win, and they've all been training for forever to do it, and put in their, you know, all the sacrifice and everything.
Yeah.
If it was true that they all deserve to win, then they'd all win.
Right.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because someone will win, and then someone will go to them and go, "You really deserved this."
Yeah.
That makes no sense at all.
It makes no sense.
And then someone will say, "I'm proud of you."
Yeah.
Okay. So all of that is based in judgment.
Right.
Through beliefs that are connected back to survival, which are delusional. Because on the other side of that is, I don't deserve.
Right.
And now we're kicking our butt. We've got the self-critic coming in.
Yep.
And we have this like, I've got to now overcompensate and work harder and force, and whoever knows what will come from that. Maybe it'll just bring a whole bunch of procrastination and other challenging issues, because I don't deserve now, and I'm not worthy, and I'm shameful. So it'll have the opposite, right? And it's like, okay, we've got to drop these types of terms. Needs is another term.
Yeah.
I need. The question mark behind that is rarely ever asked.
Yeah.
That to how true it is.
Right.
Right? It's just believed because it's felt so strongly.
Yep.
The feeling is coming from a perception believed.
Yep.
The perception believed is in the dark. It's in the unconscious, but the feeling's not in the unconscious. You're feeling it.
Yeah.
I need you to insert the demand, which is maybe what you think you deserve or entitled to, which is causing drama in your relationship. I do a lot of relationship work, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, it's just simple. These are beliefs, but we don't think about those as beliefs. We don't think of deserving as a belief, or you know, we just think of other kind of more typical things. We're often on the surface with this stuff.
Right.
And I mean, it's just fascinating because it's really simple once pointed out, and it's the most empowering thing possible, because it's you're dealing with, like, you're the
Yeah. Well, and it's you have to take that step back to get that high level view of what, and be honest with yourself when you see it.
Yes.
To go, did I really think that was going to happen? Did I really believe that was who I was in that situation? You know, in to be honest about it and go, okay, well, how do I change that then?
That's always the question, isn't it?
That's
how do I change it?
Yeah. And of course, just like, you know, with an addiction, you know, the first thing you've got to do is believe and understand that you have a problem and you're addicted, and then you can get past it. If you don't believe you're addicted, you know, you may have small success at the beginning, but it's going to come back and be an issue.
I use rehab a lot, actually, for this work to describe it. Because we're addicted to, because addicted, you can also call adding.
Right.
So that higher perspective you're talking about is awareness.
Right.
because we are aware of these thoughts, we are aware of these feelings, we are aware of these behaviors. The awareness itself,
Mhm.
if you actually ask some questions about that, you realize it's an invisible nothingness. You can't
Right.
actually make sense of it through language.
Yeah.
It's only experientially obvious.
Mhm.
Like if I say, be aware of a thought that you're having in your mind, if I say,
Right.
be a thought of say 111 in your mind, for example, you say 111 and you're okay, there's something aware of that, true?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, there's something aware. Now, is that which is aware of that, is that something?
Right.
And it's like, no, I don't know what it is. It just is aware.
Yeah.
It's just
It's just there.
aware.
Yeah.
It's just there, like, right? And it doesn't really have does it have a start point or a finish
Right.
point or a shape even?
Yeah.
None of this is there.
Right. Yeah.
That's our deeper nature. That's the
Mhm.
higher self, if you like. So that's
Yeah.
where everything is witnessed from. But also the person we believe ourselves to be is witnessed.
Yeah.
So if the person is insecure, feeling insecure, you can say, I feel insecure. But the I is not feeling insecure. Only the person who you're
Right.
witnessing is feeling
Is feeling
insecure.
insecure.
The
Yeah.
I itself is doing nothing.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
part of it.
Right.
That's where we can make change.
Yeah.
Right. So say, for example, you're helping someone lose weight, right?
Yep.
The person they take themselves to be
Mm.
is overweight.
Yeah.
And perhaps they have that in their life because they were attractive. They drew attention in a way that felt really negative to them, maybe
Right.
sexually or something
Mhm.
like that. Maybe they got really bad flack from females or whatever the case may have been.
Sure.
The meaning that they created based on their beauty was, it's a problem. It's a problem to my survival. And now to resolve that unconsciously, I'm going to solve the feeling of that pain through eating.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hit two birds with one stone. I'm going to go out of shape and solve the feeling problem with two things,
Right.
right? Which could be eating foods that are going to do both of them,
Right.
right? And instantly gratify that.
Sure.
Now that's the person I've become.
Mhm.
So I'm overweight.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then when it's like, I don't want to be overweight anymore, but the person I am is overweight, right? So
Right.
I am,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, but I don't want to be overweight anymore.
Yeah.
As soon as that starts to get targeted, like say you start to lose weight or whatever, you will find sabotaging behavior come.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
Because I have to keep the person I am, because that's me, right?
Right.
That's who
Yeah.
you can't get,
Exactly.
if you get rid of the weight, I disappear with
Right.
this, right? And
Yeah.
then someone's going, I don't know what it is, but I get to a certain point, right? I do
Mhm.
really well and I get to a certain point and then I don't know what happens, but something happens.
Yeah.
And I get derailed from where
Yep.
I was going. And
Yep.
then I somehow find myself in the same place or even worse.
Right.
Like I
Yep.
started trying to lose weight and then end up worse than where I was.
Yep.
It's like, how is that happening?
Yeah.
And it's going, well, you didn't realize you were actually addressing your identity when you're doing
Mhm.
this. And you were afraid that you're going to vanish
Right.
if that happens. So
Yeah.
unless you experientially, and I mean, I do this daily as meditation, unless you experientially come back to the witnessing state and acclimatize, literally, like
Yeah.
energetically acclimatize to who you really are
Right.
beyond the person you're taking yourself to be, you will not overthrow
Right.
the survival mechanism that's saying, I'm not vanishing, I'm
Yeah.
staying.
Yeah.
Despite what you want, which is connected to a whole bunch of values. Maybe it's connected to, I want to have children or I want to be in a relationship or I just want to be healthy or whatever.
Yeah.
They are not enough
Right.
if they are going to end you.
Yeah. 100%.
It's like, well, where am I going to be? You see?
Yep.
And so what I noticed in the health industry in many different areas, in psychology and counseling, because I've trained a lot of those people over
Yeah.
the years, it's very rare that practitioners, coaches, therapists, and so on are willing to address the level at identity.
Yeah.
Because it's
No, I
like,
agree.
can we do everything else but that? Like, can I just keep that bit? And it's like, no, that's the bit that's core to the thing that you're trying to deal with.
Yep.
Right. And the
Yep.
good news is it was never you.
Right.
It was just a
It's
construct.
just yep.
And you'll find if you were to look at your life clearly over 20 years, or maybe 6 months, you'll know that this person's constantly changing.
Yep.
So it's never been a fact of who you are, right?
Right.
The question is, if that's true, and if anyone was to resonate with that truth, how do I do that kind of work? How do I work at the level of identity, which will make my exercise goals 10 times easier, my
Right.
financial goals 10 times better, my desires for connection and relationship, everything comes back to this.
Yeah.
Right? It's at the
Totally.
core of it all.
Yep.
And it's been an absolute blessing to be able to one, empower individuals, but also coaches and fitness instructors and yoga teachers and all those people who want to work at that level and going, well, how I know that's what's everyone can, a lot of people can
see
sense
it.
this is happening, it's just,
this
is clear this is going on, but how do we do it? And so I have 3 basic practices that deal with that. The first practice is to, one, have a surgical, very specific process to identify unconscious thoughts that you're believing. So it's very simple. It's like, how do I, what am I believing? If I don't know what I'm believing, what am I believing? Right.
Yeah. Right.
And then once I've discovered what I'm believing, how do I disidentify from that?
Yeah.
And that takes a line of questions, and it's not a mental process. Sometimes people think, oh, it's so mental. It's such a mental thing. It's like, no. It's an awareness process.
Right.
Because you cannot be what you're aware of. And when you place a question mark on something you're believing, it all of a sudden expands, whereas contracted like this before. It all of a sudden opens up, new possibility starts to happen. It's like, maybe that's not as true as I originally thought, because it's not true for other people.
Right.
Right. I can see a bunch of other people not struggling with this. So it's clearly not true.
Right.
How do I shift that? So critical. There's the other process is to be in the witnessing state at least once a day.
Yeah.
And that's a simple thing to do in terms of it doesn't take long, and it lifts your vibration naturally. You're not trying to do something. You're not creating something. You're just being in the practicing of being sober, of being so identified with your thoughts and personal state, right? And it's just clear of that and just be with that. That really helps the inquiry, because when you see thought, you can see thoughts now, whereas before you couldn't see them. They're so close to you. And you can also witness uncomfortable feelings. If you don't have any witnessing distance, uncomfortable feelings are like so there, you don't even have space to not react to them and not, basically live them out.
Yeah.
And the third step is to learn how to physically regulate your nervous system through emotional release, because that survival mechanism has charge in the body.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And we're not conditioned to release that.
Right.
Unless we would look like toddlers or something, just crying and ranting and doing things and like calming down. You see how they do it? They just go blah, 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 right? We're like, well, we can't do that as adults. Like I'm in a boardroom or doing some meeting at work. That's not going to happen. So how do we safely and respectfully discharge this energy, right? So it's not so it doesn't keep perturbing the mind into states that aren't healthy, right?
Yeah.
There's simple processes there. So if you have those things together, you have like an empowerment process for creating the life that resonates with you, rather than the life you've been conditioned with, or that is just a perpetuation of traumas and wounds of the past that we keep proving. We love to prove our beliefs to be true. I mean, we
Sure.
just
Yep.
love proving our beliefs. Just look at
Yep.
social media and
Yep.
the comment threads and whatever. It's like,
Yep.
how do I prove my position? And it's weird when you get to a point where you're like, I don't even want to prove it anymore, but I can't
Right.
help myself but prove it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sick of proving it.
Yeah.
And with this area, like, it's like exercise. Like, it's like healthy eating. It's like sleeping well. There's resistance to taking
Mhm.
responsibility for that, isn't there? It's like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
this is just another thing I have to do. I don't want to have to, like, I'm already tired, or I'm already
Yeah.
da 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 da. And it's like, well, holistically, if your health is, so you like, you're not eating well and you don't have good energy and your insides are a mess.
Right.
Ultimately, that's the biggest time waster. That's the
Oh,
biggest pain
absolutely.
point, and so
Mhm.
it takes a mature and a respectful, kind of sincere approach to life to say, I'm going to be responsible for that stuff. And I
Right.
found that was, for me, that was my initial biggest resistance. I just wanted someone else to figure. Just no, just take it, bro. I don't want to do. I don't.
Right.
Well, firstly, I didn't even know how to do it. I had no.
Sure.
If
Of
I didn't
course.
even know you could do it. Like,
Right.
we didn't have podcasts like this and listen to amazing
Right.
people. We
Yeah.
had nothing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
miracle,
and that's
mate.
no, it is. And I mean, and that's one of the things that I think you said earlier is that it's becoming so much more of mainstream, and it's becoming more
Mm,
popular to realize that this is happening,
yeah.
within each of us. And what I've noticed too is that it's amazing when you connect with somebody who's able to do this and is understanding their purpose and their place and and at that level, and it's like, oh my gosh, like we connected a whole different like space and energy and time. Like it's just, it's bonkers how it happens. And it's like, oh my gosh, wow.
Mm,
And then you can see the people that are not, that are still in their beliefs of who they are, and that's who they are. And one of the things you said, it made me think of like the person that's just like, see, I proved it. I always fail. I never win, and it's like, okay, well, and like you said with the sprinters, like there's just statistics. There's going to be winners. There's going to be losers. Nobody's, going to be successful at winning the lottery every time. Like, it's just not going
yes.
to happen. And so there's things that are just like, there are things that are absolutes because of simply the way statistics work, but that doesn't define who you are,
Yes. Exactly.
and I think that's the
Exactly.
thing that people take at face value, is like, nope, that's the way it worked. That's who I am. I never get the promotion. See, told you. Um, it versus like, okay, well, why am I identifying myself with the person that has to have the promotion?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
at the core.
Uh, yeah. It's so seductive, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so seductive to feel that energy of that hurt and to say exactly what you said.
Mhm.
It feels really strange to soften in those moments, that it just feels so bizarre to shift the habit from contracting and protecting and
Mhm.
enforcing, like what you just said,
Yeah.
right? That's the easiest thing to do.
Right.
But to come into the habit of, I always get rejected, for example, right? So I've had another date with someone, or another
Right.
interview, and the idea is I always get rejected. And it's like,
Mhm.
are you prepared to, one, have an arsenal of questions that turn that idea into nonsense, complete
Mhm.
and utter nonsense, right? No
Right.
different to the boogeyman under the bed for a child,
Right. Yeah.
right? And then soften.
Mhm.
And right in that softening there can be the grief,
Yeah.
where we actually learn to let go and we actually learn to come home,
Right.
where we feel so powerful. But not at an ego place. We feel powerful because we've become who we are.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
everybody knows that feeling. At some point they've truly released and felt like all of a sudden things aren't as complicated as they seemed before. Things
Right.
don't seem as overwhelming as they seemed before.
Yeah.
It's like, I've got this. I still don't know what I'm doing, but I don't feel like there's a problem
Mhm.
right now.
Yeah.
That's our natural state all the
Yeah.
time.
Right.
All the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And by misidentifying, we lose that. We
Yeah.
forget that is our natural state.
Yeah.
And this is relevant in every industry that serves to empower people
Mhm.
in the practicalities of their lives, which is why we're speaking. I mean,
Right.
you know, health, mental health. Mental health is such a massive area because of what we're speaking to. There's not the discernment. Like if I had
Yeah.
depression, it's like, okay, I've got this now. It's like, is it really a biomechanical issue? Is it a issue with serotonin production? Is it?
Mhm.
Or is it something I'm identified with that's causing all of those chemicals to take place?
Right.
How can you discern if you don't know how to look at it?
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I'm just going to assume there's something wrong with my DNA, and I'm going to assume there's something wrong with my chemicals, and then I'm just going to assume I need something to replace that. I just have to
Right.
assume that.
Yep.
You see?
Yep.
Same goes in relationships. Like the amount of assumptions we make based on not having the discernment of what's going on inside of
Mhm.
us is catastrophic. And it's
Oh yeah.
very, very frustrating as a human being.
Yeah.
Is literally running around the dark, hitting into things.
Yeah.
That's a frustrating experience.
Mhm.
It's like, will someone turn the bloody light on so I can see the chairs and the table and the thing?
Right.
I'll start running into this stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, it's great that we can do this, and
Yeah.
a lot of hearts are now, and minds are at a place where it's like, I'm willing to hear this. You know,
Yeah.
I'm willing to. I
Yeah.
know this is true.
Right.
I know this is true.
Yeah.
And now I'm actually grateful that there is a way to work through that.
Mhm.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Well,
beautiful.
you know, for those people that this resonates with, right? This strikes a chord.
Mm,
They're like, okay, you know, this sounds like something I need to start addressing.
yeah.
Which really should be probably everybody, but for those people that are like noticing that they're at that point where it's like, okay, I, this is all pieces coming together. How can they get you know, follow you, connect with you to learn more about what you're doing and seek help through you?
There's two ways. It's like a gym.
Mhm.
I see it just like a gym because I see it like a lifestyle,
Mhm.
right? One, you can go get a personal trainer and then they support you directly, which will probably speed up your process and make you more, you know, equipped on the machines and
Right.
so on, and have a better self-awareness because you had someone working with you.
Right.
So that's what I do as a one-on-one private coach.
Mhm.
I coach people specifically in the skills and tools that I've mentioned, and
Yeah.
make it very tailored and applicable to the
Mhm.
very thing you're experiencing in your life right now.
Right.
The other thing that I offer is a community, just like a gym. It's a
Mhm.
community, people that come together on the same thing that they're working on, that come together on a weekly basis. I found
Okay.
that was really important, to activate these skills, to keep them going because they're easily dropped. You know, it's
Right.
just like, oh,
Yeah.
that was sounding really great. And then, oh, back to my old, back to
Yep.
my old regime, you know.
Yep.
I noticed that a lot with, I've got a few people in my community that have done like big awakening experiences. Maybe it's through plant medicines or like big retreats with like
Yep.
meditation and so on. And it's like, how do I integrate that?
Yeah.
There's not often integration offered.
Right.
It's usually like boom and like
Mhm.
wow, and then back to my routine because the habit
Yeah.
will take back over. The habit's stronger than the
Right.
experience.
Yeah.
The experience is critical because you got to know it's possible.
Right.
But the old habit will take back over, where that's where integration is necessary. So we have integration sessions every single week as a part of a community, and we oh, it's a blast. Like it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful community that come together and they do the work. We're there to do the work. We don't go to the gym and all sit around having coffees and talking about the weekend. We're there doing the thing, right? We're building our booties, you know, we're like building our internal muscles, so to speak. So yeah, I have a community membership, and it's also so much more accessible financially as well, like that. And there's a lot of people, once they understand it, that's perfect for them. So yeah, they're the two things that I currently offer as a part of this. Yeah.
Cool. And well, I'll put this in the show notes. I'll put links so people can get directly to those and connect with you, and I'll put your social on there as well, your social media, so people can follow along, and you know, if there's just like starting to strike the match and they're like, I'm not really if I'm willing to take a jump yet, but they can at least get exposure to what you're doing, because I think you're like 100% on the right track in helping people figure this out, because like I said, I've started to go through some of this and understanding and being able to like pull the curtain back and see behind who I really am. And is somebody, one of my clients that I'm coaching, you know, I was talking to her and she was just like, you're just so different than everybody else. And I'm like, well, that's because I'm me. Right? Like I've learned who I am. I've learned who I am and who I want to be. And that's, you know, I don't push it on anybody else, but you know, I can show you how to do certain things that you know, that just work better for the cells, work better for your body, those types of things. But like, you have to find out who you are at the core.
Bingo.
Yep.
Bingo.
So Chris, I want to thank you so much. Like, I want to thank you so much. It's been great having you on. I love connecting with you.
Yeah, it's been a huge pleasure. And I want to thank you so much for giving me an opportunity again to share this passion, and to be open to this type of thing and to offer it to the world. I feel like we're listening to the same radio station. We're you know, cosmically very connected into this is necessary, and this is the chapter for humanity to develop this type of understanding. And it's never been, it's seemingly more necessary. And it's so bizarre. Once these things are learned, it's like, how did we not learn this at school? Like, what? You know, like, you know, it's just so funny, but this is how it is. So yeah, I deeply appreciate your time and your efforts into what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's been great.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.